Okay, so picking off where we left off. Okay, so when I write 70% as a decimal, I'm going to put the 0 in front of the decimal. Okay, because I have no whole numbers. Okay, the 7 is going to go in my tenths, and the 0 goes in my hundredths because I have 70 out of 100. Okay, the other way I can write it is just as 0.7. Okay, for this one, if I'm writing 3/10, think about which place value I need to work with. So remember, your first place value is going to be your tenths, seconds, hundredths, third is thousandths, so our answer is going to be 0.3. Alright, lovely. Moving on. So again, this one we're dealing with fractions, decimals, and percentages. So we talked about earlier 1/2 as a fraction, decimal it's 0.5. Our percentage, we need 50%. Okay. Oops. There we go. Alright, so for this one, I've got 70%. Now if I look at this right here, I've got a 7 in my tenths place value. So that means that I've got a numerator of 7. And my denominator is going to be 10. Alright, and then for this one, again I need to think about my place values. So if I think about the hundredths place value, that's my second place value, and I have 3 hundredths, so that means that I've got 0. Now, I don't have any tenths because I don't have any tens place in my fraction, okay? So if I had 13 out of 100, that would mean that I have 1/3. Okay, but for this one, it's going to be 0.03 because we have 3 hundredths. Alright, right, 0.25 is a fraction. So again, we're going to look at our place values. Okay, I want you to try this one on your own. Okay, because I want you to think about your place values. You've got tenths and hundredths. You're going to pause the video. I want you to try it yourself, and then you can check your fraction with me. For your extension, I want you to try to simplify that fraction for me. Okay, so remember when we simplify, we look for a number that we can divide the top and the bottom by, till we can't divide it any further. Okay, so once you've paused it, you can check your answer. So when I look, I've got 25 out of 100, right, because I've got 25 hundredths. Then, when I want to simplify that, I can divide both of those numbers by 25. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 25. And that gives me an answer of 1/4. Okay, write 3/5 as a decimal. So, when I'm writing decimals from fractions, what I want to do is I want to take the top number, my numerator, and I want to divide it by the denominator. Okay, and when I do that in my calculator, I'm going to get 3 divided by 5 equals 0.6. You can also change this fifths into tenths. Okay, and that I'm going to multiply both of the top and the bottom by 2. Okay, that gives me 6/10. Remember, this is my tenths place, so that means I've got 6 in the tenths place. And 9 out of 100 as a decimal. Again, I want you to think about your place value, so pause the video, okay, and give yourself a second to go through and write that out for me. Okay, and if I've got 0.09, because remember, again, we want the hundredths place. This is our tenths, this is our hundredths. That means that we need a 0 in the tenths place and a 9 in the hundredths. Oh, did I skip any? Nope, we're good. Alright, next one. So we want fractions equivalent to 1/5. So we did an example of this one earlier on when we were looking at fractions equivalent to these ones here. And also we did the 1/3. So look at those two examples from the first video if you want a little more clarification on that. I'm just going to tell you the correct answers. So for this one, we're going to have, we'll just stick with green. We're going to have 3 over 15 because to go from 5 to 15, I multiply by 3. 1 times 3 gives me 5. Okay, for this one, to go from 5 to 75, I have to multiply by 15. Okay, 1 times 5 is not the same as 1 times 15, so that is not going to be equivalent. For this one, I need to multiply by 4. So 5 times 4 gives me 20. 1 times 4 does not give me 8, so that's not equivalent. For this one, I've got 5. To get to 30, I have to multiply by 6. 1 times 6 gives me 6. So that one is equivalent. And then if I check this one, 5 times 5 gives me 25. 1 times 5 is not 21. Alright, lovely. 1/5 is a decimal. So for this one, very similar to what we were doing before, I want you to change your denominator into a value that is a place value. So that means either tenths or hundredths or thousandths, okay? So in this case, I've got fifths, so if I multiply by 2, I can get to tenths. So that means that I multiply the top by 2 and the bottom by 2. I get 2 over 10. That means my decimal is going to be 0.2. Because I've got 2 in the tenths place. 0.7 is a fraction. So for this one, I'm talking about my tenths place value. So I am going to put my denominator as 10. And then whatever number is in the place value, that is going to be our numerator. So in this case, it's going to be 7 out of 10. And 50% as a fraction, we should just know off the top of our heads that that is 1/2. But the other way we could figure it out is we know that out of 100, so percentage is always out of 100. Okay, and I've got 50 out of 100. And I also know that I can divide 50 and 100 both by 50, and I get my answer of 1/2. Alright. So this one, we want to get these all into the same value. Okay, so the same type of value, sorry. So I either want them in fractions, decimals, or percentages. Now, if I've got a calculator, the easiest way to do this is to do it as decimals. Okay, so looking at these values, I've already got a decimal here. Okay, if I look at this, I've got 19 out of 100, so that really means that I've got 0.19. Okay, and that's going to be my decimal here. Okay, and then looking here, okay, I'm going to want to make this into hundredths, because I don't want to divide by 2, because this isn't going to give me a nice value if I divide by 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply so that I get hundredths. That means I need to multiply by 5. 3 times 5 gives me 15. Alright, so if I have 15 out of 100, that means that I've got 0.15. Okay? Because, again, I've got my hundredths place value, and I've got 1,515 is going in there. Okay, so then I want to order them from smallest to largest. So when I think about my place values, okay, I need to look for the place value closest to the decimal. That's our largest place value. So I want to look for the smallest number in my tenths place, so that's 1. And then if I look, is 15 or 19 the smaller number? So I'm going to go with the 15, because 15 is less than 19. And I'm going to write it in the original order. So I've got 3 out of 20. Okay. Then after that, if I look, my next smallest value, I've got 0.19, or 19% is my original value. Okay. And then if I look at the last one, I've got 0.22. And decimals are the easiest ones to work with because with percentages, you always need your denominator to be 100, whereas decimals, we can always use a calculator, especially if we've got a calculator, it makes it easier as opposed to percentages or fractions, because fractions you're always going to need the same denominator to compare, okay, and percentages you're always going to need to make it 100. Alright, let's look at this one. So we've got 24 passengers on the bus. A quarter of the passengers are men, a third are women, the rest of the passengers are children. How many passengers are children? So for this one, what I want to do is I want to make my denominator 24. So what I want you to do, I want you to take those fractions, so 1/4 and 1/3, and I want you to turn them into fractions that denominator is 24. Remember, your denominator is your bottom number. Okay, and I want you to pause the video and do that for me, and then check your answers. Okay? Alright, so you should have paused your video, and now we're going to check our answers. So, if I want to make this a fraction out of 24, I need to think to myself, how do I multiply? What do I have to multiply 4 by to get to 24? I need to multiply by 6. So that means I need to multiply the top by 6, so 6 out of 24. So that means that 6 out of 24 are going to be men. Oops, there we go. Now, over here, I want to take 1/3, and I want to turn that into 24ths. So, if I do 24 divided by 3, or 3 times what gives me 24, it's going to be 8, so that means I need to multiply my top number by 8. So 1 times 8 gives me 8. That's going to be my women. Now, if I need to figure out the rest that are children, what I really need to do is figure out how many are men and women. So I'm going to take the 6 men and the 8 women, and I'm going to add them together. So 6 plus 8. Okay, that gives me 14. Then what we need to do is we need to do the total number on the bus, 24, minus the 14 we know are men and women, because we know that the rest are children. That's going to give us 10. Alright, and that, if I add those up, we've got 10 plus 6 plus 8, that gives me 24. So my correct answer is going to be 10 are children. Okay, so guys, I hope that that's helped to clear up some of our fractions, decimals, and percentages. The next couple lessons are going to be dealing with percentages of amounts. So once we get to Monday, if I'm not back, I will record you guys another video that talks about percentages of amounts, and it'll be more straightforward questions with some examples, okay? And you can work through those. Alright, if you have any questions, post them in the Google Classroom, and I can always take a look at them, okay? Alright, well done. Bye.